Clap, 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 clap. Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to our conversation. I'm Colm. I'm the coordinator of youth ministry here, and with me, as per usual,
I'm Father Matthew. I'm the pastor here at St. Anne's.
and we're very excited to have another special guest from our parish. Why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Shawna Arnold, and I have been attending St. Anne's Parish for roughly 7 years. So I'm glad to be here today. Thanks.
Okay. And 7 years is longer than I've been at the parish. Is it longer than you've been at the parish? How long have you guys been here?
Well, since married, 11 years, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I'm still the newbie of the group here.
yeah, we can push him around.
I don't know.
Yeah. So another Wednesday, and I think you commented a conversation we had while you were on the way in, is it seems like the last few Wednesdays, all it is bad weather.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been like that every single Wednesday, yes.
And I worry because Wednesday is the day that we have Eucharistic adoration from 9 in the morning till 9 in the evening. And yet it's always Wednesday that the roads are bad and the wind is up. And I think, oh shoot, I hope people are safe and
Yeah,
able to come if they want to come.
A little bit better as the day was going, but yeah, I don't know what's going on with this. You said your neighbors are losing sheds. And
Yeah, there's a lot of destruction in our neighborhood from the winds, but yeah, you're almost getting used to that. I used to think it was odd when my son lived in Newfoundland and he would talk about how bad the winds are, but I think we're getting them here now. So
Yeah.
it's,
And I don't want to go political. If you could talk about the weather in DC, today is the day of the inauguration. I just saw pictures and it's green and sunny, and I'm a little jealous just of that. That's all we'll say on that topic.
Oh yeah, that is probably happening as we're recording this, which is interesting. So there you go, a moment in time, I guess.
Yeah, but just struck by when it's just so blowing snow and blizzardy here, and then to see another picture not that far away, and like, oh, that seems really pleasant.
There you go. Spring will come at some point to Saskatchewan, but not today, apparently.
no, not quite yet.
There you go. So we're entering into kind of a run of special topics and kind of a season of life, I guess, a little bit. And yeah, we're excited to dive into this. You kind of throw us back to some like philosophy and some Greek smart people.
Yes, we'll kind of walk through that quickly, I think, and then open it up.
Yeah, and see where we go from there.
And what started this all off is January 31st in this diocese is Reverence for Life Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And it's often days we'll have special prayers for life issues, and there's a lot of them that we face. So I thought leading up to that, we'd have a few homilies on some of these more challenging issues. And so this past weekend, the focus was on abortion. And then next weekend, we'll be talking about euthanasia, and then the third weekend, vaccines. And we won't get to the other two yet. We'll have lots of time to address those. But so it was abortion this weekend. And I also wanted to say that the approach I wanted to use to talk about these issues was that of virtue. And virtue is one of those ideas that's really key in Catholic moral theology. I don't think often gets like out of the academic world and into the pews and the hearts of people very much. Like have you guys heard much about virtue or thought much? Or is that a kind of a part of your approach to life and faith, or is it pretty foreign? What's your sense of that?
Personally, yes, those are things I ask God to help me grow stronger in myself. I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah, the church guy be like, sure, yes, virtues, go. But I think I'm right with you that I don't think we talk about it explicitly that much. Like, I think I've grown a lot more of it in my personal formation and growing and some mentors in my life. We'll talk about one later that I might mention a story. It was another youth minister a decade ago really brought Prudence into my life in a way that I was like, Prudence, what the heck is that? Like, in a practical way. So it's interesting that it hasn't necessarily been from like catechism class or from the pulpit that I learned virtue. It was actually really through just faith-filled people that kind of turned me on to virtue, which is interesting. So it was nice to hear it on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. But I like, Shawna, your point too about praying for the virtues, and that's probably the best thing to take from this, for sure. So then we talked through, and there's the four big ones. This is all from Aristotle, then brought into our faith as well. And we talked first about prudence, which the best way I could think to describe it is seeing things as they are, seeing reality as it is. And that's harder than we sometimes think it is. So but that's, of course, the first step, because you can't love or decide what's just unless you're seeing things as they truly are. And then second one is justice, which you treat people as they deserve to be treated. And then courage and temperance. And those, the first were about finding out what we're supposed to do. And then courage and temperance are about doing what we're supposed to do when it's hard. And from this, I thought we could maybe talk more now with Shawna about why it is we brought you here for this topic. And it's really an exciting thing for us as the parish to have someone who is doing the work that Shawna is doing. So maybe if you want to first explain a little bit of what God has called you to and what you've been doing in your own personal ministry.
Well, my background, I'm not going to get into too much. I don't know if we have a lot of time to do that, but I came from a very dysfunctional home. I had been through a lot of hardship throughout my life, a lot of brokenness, but in a way, God has used that past to help me to be more compassionate and to be able to serve people that are hurting and broken. Mm-hmm. So I had an abortion when I was 19, and God has used that now to help me to help others who are suffering in that way, as well as other ways of addiction, brokenness, and various ways in life. So what I have done so far is I've written a book. It's called From Darkness into Light, Finding My Way to the Father's Merciful Love. I also just had my CD testimony published on Lighthouse Catholic Media. Awesome. And I also been speaking in high schools probably for, 12 years. So, and that's just become a regular thing. Now I've been expanding it to different places, wherever I'm asked to go. But because of COVID, I'm right now not doing much. But yeah, God has brought me into a place now where he's using this to help others. And I tell you, it wasn't an easy walk to do. For one, to get to the place where I am now, and to be able to love myself and respect myself, that was a hard journey, I have to admit. But with God and allowing God to heal my heart, that's what helped me to overcome a lot of this, a lot of the hardships I've been through.
That's beautiful.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I do think one of the beautiful things about getting to know a parish is, like, there's so many amazing people within the parish that often you wouldn't know just by walking in, right? Like, you see Shawna coming in with her family, coming to Mass, and no idea of the kind of what you've been through, and also what God has done with that, and the way you've responded to it. And so maybe if you don't mind sharing a little bit more. You mentioned the hardship that you went through, and then sort of God healing you through that. And can you talk more about how did that come about, especially the healing part? Like, how did that come about, and what does that mean for you now?
Okay, basically the part, if I cut right into my story to the healing part, is I was at a point in my life where I thought, there's got to be more to life than what I'm living. I was just at the bottom of the barrel, the deepest crevice of the ground. And I just thought I had to reach out, and I thought, I'm going to turn to my faith. I was Catholic because of the sense I had my sacraments growing up. But I didn't know you could know God or have a relationship with him. I was never told you could know him personally. But I took a step and I went back to church. And then I ended up meeting people that were very supportive of me, especially elderly grandmas. Because my grandma meant so much to me. God planted a grandma into my life. And through meeting them, I learned about my faith, and then I started to go to prayer meetings, and then I was told something called adoration would be happening at a parish, and I didn't even know what adoration is. I was in my mid-20s at this point. So I remember I went to confession. I confessed all my sins, and I never went since grade 2, and I'm now in my 20s. I confessed everything, including that abortion. And then I ended up going to adoration, and I remember when I went to adoration, I wasn't exactly sure what it was. I was explained kind of what it was, but I was so open to now getting to know God. And during adoration, I was ready to give God everything out of my heart. I wanted to place everything into God's hands and place it at his feet. And I remember just closing my eyes and begging God at the bottom of my heart to help me, to heal me, to change me. And I felt this love and peace come over me, and it was so strong. And I remember just bawling. And I had tears just flooding my face into my sleeves of my long sleeve shirt. And God touched my heart. You cannot tell me that God isn't real, because he touched my heart. I can't explain exactly, but I knew at that moment that God was real, and I needed to smarten up, and that he loved me. He loved me. Even though I've been through everything I've been through, that he loved me, an imperfect person. And that was significant because I used to think that God only loved perfect people. I remember even going to mass and looking around and seeing like big families in pews and looking at them and thinking, I shouldn't be here, and being jealous and thinking I'm not worthy. I'm a loser. I don't have a family. My mom died of an overdose. My dad doesn't want me. Why would God want me? Look what I've all done. But I tell you, when I had that moment through adoration and he gave me that grace and touched my heart, it made me realize that he loves us. He loves fallen people. He loves to take us and bring us up and change our lives and transform us so others can see, look what I've done. God is real, right? But it's just, he gave me such a grace that I just feel like I can't stop thinking about God. Yeah, so.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
beautiful.
I'm grateful for that,
Yeah.
definitely, and thankful, but.
And we're grateful, and I can see why you've been talking in high school. So, yeah, but it is beautiful just to see, like, I don't know, I just get the sense of like this urgency of like you had to respond. You know, it was such a profound encounter, and it's just beautiful. You know, and I think that's such a light in the darkness, and to the hope, and whoever's listening and hearing to know that that's possible.
Yeah.
And everybody has a story, right? Everyone has a past, everyone has a future, and it's just a living witness of courage, right? Of you taking those first small steps, and shout out to the grandmas.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
who are
You don't
present
realize
and,
how much your
came in
witness
life,
is.
and,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
and did they know what they were setting you up for? What how God was working through that? That's a beautiful story.
When I think back to everything, I just see all the lay people that had a role in me and my conversion, or helping me to grow. Everyone had a role. And I needed to hear from each person something different. And each person built me up in their own way. They don't even realize them giving me time on a 20-minute phone call a week, how much that did for me, or sending me a Christmas card, how much that meant to me. I don't receive Christmas cards even from my father. Like, they don't realize how much those things mean to a person that doesn't ever receive anything like that. So don't ever underestimate what you're doing. Always try to keep up your good works, and don't think you're never doing enough, because even a small gesture means a lot to certain people.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. And I love that you focus on, and I say that as a priest, that like there was the role that lay people had in what God did.
Yes.
Because there were priests in the story in terms of adoration and confession, but not only that, maybe even not primarily the priest, but it is the mission of the whole church to reach out and to love. And I think you're expressing the fruit of that in your own life.
Definitely. Like I said, like the people that would sit there and allow me to phone them in the beginning of my healing journey, like I would take at least an hour or more on a phone call, and they would give me that time, like that was priceless. Yeah. And I really needed that. I needed someone to listen, to let me cry out all my pain, and to be there for me and say, you know what, God loves you, and you're a special child of God. I might have not wanted to accept it at first or believe it, but over time, when you keep hearing it repeatedly, it starts to sink in, and you start to believe it. Yeah. So it's.
So I wanted to ask the question in terms of this thing, because I'm sure, think of like the people in our parish and anybody watching this, like we all probably have people in our lives who are where you were, and even like a lot of us ourselves in our own moments can doubt, like, can God love this with all that I've done and all of that? So what would you get if someone were to come to you and are they say that themselves, like, how could God love me? Like, this is what I've done. This is what's happened to me. Like, what do you say to someone in that situation, or how do you respond?
Well, I basically tell them some of my story, and then they definitely realize that, yes, if you can turn back to God, then I easily can. Sadly, there's a lot of aspects in my life that were very sinful. I've committed some terrible sins. But like I said, God has used that now to help me to reach out to others who are, kind of at the ends of the barrel. Like, you're done down on the barrel. And that's the one thing too for me, is when I see people that are hurting, I can just sense certain souls, I guess, that are just, you know, that they're ready right then and there. You know that they're just at that moment, and there's nothing more exciting for me than when I go into school and kids are rushing up immediately, like, I need help, and telling me what's going on. Like, I know right then and there they're serious and they want to reach out and get help. So I usually direct people to different places on a one-on-one conversation, different phone numbers or whatever they can reach out to.
Yeah.
But I like to just get down and practical with them and tell them the reality of where I came from. And that really helps people, their eyes to be opened up. So
That's beautiful. And I wonder if you could explain it, because you explained your movement from because learning to know God and his love. And then there is another movement from first knowing that for yourself to then being willing to share your story. And how did that movement happen for you?
well, I had, this sounds odd, but I had 3 random people at different points in my life say to me, you should write out your story. And then I'm like, well, okay. And then I'd hear it again from somebody, and then again. So then I thought, well, maybe I'll try writing it out. And it just flew out of me. But then it was like, now what? What do I do? Am I willing to let people now see this? Am I willing to allow people to look down on me? What are they going to think of me? You know, like, how are they going to look at me? And I just, what I did is I did a lot of praying. I started to just take baby steps and trust in God. And as I take a little baby step and a door would open, I'd go in, and then he was there for me. And then a next door would open, and then I'd take some more little baby steps. And even to this day, I have a strong faith, but I still am growing in trust in Jesus. Like, it's not something you just have immediately. So every hardship he gives me in my life, I place it into his hands. And I'm telling you, it's not easy, but I have to admit, I've looked back at my life from where I was to where I am now. And I used to be such a wreck about things. Like, I would just be a wreck about it. And now I notice that I'm a lot calmer when I go through a really hard trial. It's like, I'm not perfect, but it's a lot more easier as my trust has grown in God.
That's great. And that's part of the language of virtue that I didn't get into in my homily, is that virtues are things that we learn by doing, you know, and we grow into them. So when you talk about taking these little steps of faith, like, those are steps of courage and of faith both, and you grew in both as you did them.
Yeah.
And that healing comes gradually, and a lot of these things we grow in them gradually with God's grace as we persist.
And that's why I'm so grateful for this opportunity, and the work that you do in sharing your story and reaching out is also kind of dispelling that story, because people can get stuck in a moment. I'm a big U2 fan. There's a song, Stuck in a Moment You Can't Get Out of. And it's like, people don't know. It's like they're looking at, I had a dream once. It was the idea, I was at the edge of a cliff, and I wanted to be on the other side, and I was just crying, because it's like, I want to be on the other side and not going, right? And I think it was just like this image to me of this idea of, like, I don't know the next step, you know. And sometimes it was like, that's when you go to prayer, you have that community that can help show those practical steps to help guide you forward. And as you were sharing, I just thought, you know, as you're saying, you're growing in trusting God or in Jesus, which I think is beautiful and vulnerable to share. It's not necessarily a default easy thing to do. It's not easy at all. But I was like, she's growing in trusting God, but I also heard, it was like, in some ways, I was like, you're growing in trust in yourself and confidence in yourself and how God sees you, you know. And I said, that's such a beautiful thing to think of, you know. And some of the work I do in young people is like getting them to grow in confidence, not to be like self-absorbed in the sense of like, I want you to see you as God sees you, you know. And I think there's a boldness and a confidence that comes of knowing whose you are. And
it takes a lot of time. Like I said, like, just having people reassure you with compliments, like even someone saying, hey, your shirt's nice. At first, like, I was actually that bad. I had no self-esteem. I'd be like, oh, okay. And then someone, your hair looks good. Oh, okay. And then eventually you get to a point where when you hear it enough, it's like, oh, I know. Thank you. I appreciate that.
But you can accept the compliment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Whereas it takes time, especially when you've come from a lot of physical or mental and emotional abuse growing up. It's not easy, you know. So that's the thing too. Don't look down on somebody and think or judge them in a way, because you don't know what they've been through or what they're going home to, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, even if you could buy somebody a compliment once in a while, and if they dismiss it, just keep it up once in a while, because you, like I said, you don't know the background of what's happening.
Yeah, we'd be so quick to assume. What people are
Exactly.
going
A
or why
lot
they're
of
doing what they're doing.
judgment. Yeah, lots of judgments.
We were,
So
talking a little bit before the cameras were rolling, and you had shared, essentially that idea of like, if we just really focus on the stories, that
Yeah.
there's hidden stories that giving time, giving the space, giving the hour that people gave to you, and over time of, a lot can go into perspective if we start to realize what people are bringing and journeying with, and not to like even grow and understand, but appreciation, like Father Matt's right. And that's what literally one of the gifts that I love of being in a parish is over time, I have learned so many stories of people that you were just, John or Joe who sat on the right side. And 7 years later, now I know this amazing story and see your children or grandchildren or whatever, is starting to really sense of a community. It's not just a group of individuals, but it's a group of stories and how they intersect and the new chapters.
And there's a lot of holiness
together.
and grace in those pews.
Yeah, it's really an amazing thing to do, and an
Yeah.
opportunity just to listen.
If I could ask another question then, because I know sometimes, especially people who are really strong into the pro-life movement, sometimes they'll ask, and I've been asked, why don't priests mention abortion more in homilies? And a couple of reasons for that. One of them is, like, it doesn't often come up in their readings, and we generally, preach on the readings. But another reason I think we often hesitate is because we know, like, there's a strong possibility that someone in the pews may have had one and not be as far along in the journey of healing as you are now. And they sit there with an immense amount of shame and guilt and these whispers of, well, if anyone knew what you had done, like, and feeling as though they don't belong. And so there's a real worry, and I think it's a valid one, of, I guess, causing more trauma or more hurt or driving that person away. So I guess, what do you think, what do priests need to know, I guess, when they do bring up abortion in homilies? Like,
it's
what
really,
should we know?
Oh, sorry.
as we
It's
do
really
that?
reassuring if you were to, you have to say that, like the truth parts of it, of what it is, like you did this past Sunday. It's fact. A life starts at conception. But maybe if a person were to also mention as well that, there's hope and healing, there's a lot of men or women who have been through abortion that have sought help, and, and reassure them, like you did mention that we love you, and that sort of thing. That's good. So keep that up.
Yeah, thank you.
But also, like I said, as long as you're mentioning there's hope and healing, and or even put an insert in the bulletin where you can get hope and healing, like
That's
different.
that I didn't do, so thanks.
Yeah,
for that.
like put in a different, like there's a Rachel's Vineyard in Saskatchewan. There's the options, like just put in different.
A few of those contacts.
Yeah,
for that.
contacts.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
that's
those
the
are
word
all
for
over.
it. And also too, I have people messaging me on Messenger or emailing me, and I'm open to that as well. Like if people want to talk, I have that, especially since my CD came out. I've had people around different places around the world tell me how they want to change their lives, or how much that the story meant to them, and how they've been through similar trauma, and how now they're going to reach out and go to a Rachel's Vineyard retreat. So, I mean, I definitely can see how God works full circle, how he brings about healing now in others, which is awesome. So, no, that's...
Thanks. So I'm hearing you don't want to name the pain of abortion and also give the promise of healing, and always
Definitely,
have those two
yeah,
side by side.
because if you just say the blunt facts, which we know, that's why we're feeling shame and guilt. But if you just all of a sudden also say, there's healing
Yeah.
and there's help,
Yeah,
and you're not
just like
alone.
poking someone's wound, right? You don't
Yeah.
need to do that. Like, they know they're hurting.
Exactly. Yeah, it's and I'm telling you, it's intense guilt and shame. And the biggest thing was forgiving myself. That was the hardest out of everything, was forgiving myself for what I had done.
And how did you do that?
Well, through going to confessional a lot of the time, constantly. And I still, to this day, I go to my sacraments quite often. And I recommend you go quite often, regardless in life. But if you just keep going to your sacraments, and like I said, as you grow in your relationship with God, I just in a way, healing comes as it comes, right? It just starts to grow. The more you trust in God, the more you reach out to him, and don't give up. And it's always a step at a time.
Yeah.
It takes a long time. I didn't get where I am sitting here today just overnight.
Yeah.
It took many years,
Yeah.
and I'm still not ever going to be fully healed till the day I die.
I think that's so important for you to echo that is healing. I mean, use that expression. It's a journey.
Yes.
You know, and you mentioned, and maybe it'd be good to unpack a little bit for those that don't, the idea of like a Rachel's Vineyard retreat, and if people don't know what that is, but sometimes people go on these experiences or that, and I didn't get something out of it, or I'm not in that place. It's like we almost build the expectation that we'll be through this thing or fully healed or moved on, and to say, well, this is just a moment, you know, and to put it in perspective, and that maybe as a church community of faith is that we stay with people. You know, it's like sometimes there's someone, there's a funeral or mourning. It's like we're often really great the week of or 2 weeks of around when somebody has a loss. But it's like, where are we in, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, a month, 6 months, that we continue to loop back and we try to get better at that as a community. For yourself, and maybe just for those out there that we've mentioned a couple times, do you want to speak a little bit of what Rachel's Vineyard is?
Oh, it's a weekend retreat. I'm not sure. I don't think they've had any recently because of COVID, but if you go online and Google Rachel's Vineyard, you can find. Also, if you go on our Saskatoon Diocese webpage, they have a lot of resources for help after abortion as well. So if you go on the Saskatoon Diocese webpage, you'll find it on there somewhere. There's lots. I know our bishop does a lot of putting context up for that. So
that's great.
Yeah. So that's rcdos.ca.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't know off by
that's
heart.
good.
I just put it in Google.
Not too many people memorize it. It's okay.
Another great resource here in the city too is the Pregnancy Options Center, which is for people who are pregnant and struggling and need some more support, and they do really great work as well. Yeah, so I'm not sure where we go from here. I guess it's
I just have a spirit of gratitude, and I'm just very thankful, for you and for your story and your courage, and being a literal example of, what you preach kind of on Sunday is, that living a life of virtue. I think I want to shout out a book, and I can't remember who the writer was. The Heart of Virtue, and it's this understanding of looking at the virtues, but really applying them to your life and living them out. And as I just sit here, more of a listener today, I just think I was like, I'm just honored and humbled to see, a woman who's striving to live a life of virtue, right, and encourage others, and the power of a story. And if you're called to share it, and I think you should, not everybody is maybe in that space or in that time, necessarily do that.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can go through I know a lot of people have been through a lot of hardships and certain things, and they've confessed those sins, but they're not called to go share what they've been through. So I mean, you always have to keep asking for discernment when you pray, and if God wants you to do something, you'll do it. Like he'll be nodding at you, or something will happen where something will pop up, or you'll see this poster, or this will happen. He'll just lead you if you allow.
He's persistent.
Yes,
so, yeah.
exactly. So myself, I didn't have a way out of this. I am not a public speaker. I'm not one who likes being on camera. So for me to be doing this, I know it's the Holy Spirit. I just am not. And now I've turned into this evangelizer where I can't quit talking about God. So you just don't know what he's going to do. But
I think part of the beauty of it too is like God sees greatness in us that we don't see in ourselves, right? He sees gifts in us that we don't see in ourselves until, by his prodding and pushing, we take some steps and then see what he can do with us when we give him that chance.
And the thing too, I always like to say is God looks at your heart. He looks at your heart, and that's where his eyes are all the time, is on your heart. He sees what you can be, or what he's created you to be. Yes, definitely. So even though you've done things, God will forgive you if you are open to repent, and accept the gift of forgiveness. So, but the big thing is repenting as well. So you have to go truly be sorry for what you're doing in order to change, right? So yeah, that's
I like how you say both of those, both repenting and also accepting his forgiveness, because sometimes that's the hard part as well. As you were even saying, I think a bit in your story, and like feeling the guilt, but then believing that there's a possibility of love and forgiveness for you can also be
definitely
a challenge sometimes.
It's just that's why we need these other resources to work together so that people can get the help they need. And like I said too, just reaching out in groups, and with friends or whoever, just always talking to somebody when you're hurting. Don't just sit there and just sit there alone. Like, never be alone. Always try to reach out to someone when you're in pain. Don't ever hold that in, because it's just going to eat at you and fester and make you sick. You need to speak to somebody. There's a point in your life where you can be alone,
Yeah.
but you're just not at that point at first when you're looking for healing. So,
And I hope everyone who hears this knows that you don't need to carry it alone.
no,
Like, there
yeah,
are-
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, if
There's a lot of resources. Like, I can't stress that enough. Like, back when I was a kid in the 90s, a lot of my problems were, I didn't really have a lot of doors to go through. Whereas nowadays, there's so many ministries. Like, the problem is, where do I go? Because there's so many. Like, it's different now, right? We have so many good things happening as the world progresses, I guess. I don't know. We just have a lot of options for help.
Yeah, and I guess, as we, I think sort of, bring this together, I think is that call to greatness, that we're talking the virtue, and to know that's going to look differently for all of us in different states and times, and what your mission is and what my mission is. But that we would all step into it, with these kind of these virtues and the courage that you've kind of witnessed and called, that we're all called to do something, and even for myself, it's just a reminder of, like, okay, be present to those conversations. But what's the courageous thing for me is, like, I need to go to that website and be aware of some of those ministries, so that maybe when someone comes, that I know that person. And it's not just a phone number website, but to say, like, I have a friend, Shawna, who I think you should talk to. Or, this is pregnancy option, this is where it is, and I can drive you there. Or, so take 5 minutes, take 10 minutes, go check that website, be familiar with some of these resources and connections.
Hey friends, the last like a minute and a half got cut out for some reason, but it really wasn't the best part of it. It was more me just chatting. Shawna really said everything that I think needed to be said, but just to recap kind of cleanly, because it's just doesn't sound good, is to be a listening ear, to be a listening heart, to be present to those around you. Shawna really just kind of reaffirmed that at the end. And I shared a brief story about the idea of when I met with high school students at BGM for the first time. I was like, what could I possibly tell them? If you have an encounter with somebody, what's like the 4 things you could say? And it was kind of just maybe the Holy Spirit that came, and I said, like, know that you are not alone, that you are loved, that you're more than what you think you're capable of, more than the gifts and the talents that you see, that God has more for you, and that you're more than your worst moment or your mistake or what you think is holding you back. That the Lord wants to free you and bring you closer to Him. And those words really just kind of struck a chord. They struck a chord at me, and I'm thankful for the Holy Spirit. And we kind of just shared that. And I think what Shawna shared was a good testament to that and a good reminder of that. And so I just wanted to add that little piece to this video to have a proper end, and just an encouragement. Be present to those around you. Everybody has a story. Take time to listen. And maybe, take time, visit rcdos.ca, check out some of the Reverence for Life, some of the ministries we have and the supports for those, so that if somebody gets to a place where they're asking for help and they're looking for help, and you've already listened and they need a referral, that you be familiar with some of the great work that we're doing to serve people in need. We hope you're well. God bless you. We'll see you all next week.